Well, the United Nations General Assembly declared the 18th of July the Nelson Mandela International Day. The Assembly recognizes former South African President's contribution to the culture of peace and freedom. The resolution sought to recognize Mandela's values and his dedication to the service of humanity in conflict resolution, race relations, promotion and protection of human rights and the rights of children. Now, the day is celebrated all over the world. People dedicate their 67 minutes doing good for the people. Nelson Mandela Museum and the Eastern Cape government will be visiting Ludeke Methodist Church in Mbizana. This is where Nelson Mandela and his ex-wife, the late Winnie Madikizela-Mandela, officially tied the knot. To reflect more on Mandela Day, we're now joined by Dr. Linda Ncube-Nkomo, CEO of the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund. Dr. Nkomo, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I mean, we've seen already, how several organizations and bodies, both here and abroad, have already started commemorating and celebrating, Mandela Day ahead of course, the day tomorrow. I mean, it's an important year for South Africa, particularly given, 30 years of democracy. We've also come out of a very important election. How is the Children's Fund, yourselves, how are you going to be celebrating and also just keeping Nelson Mandela's legacy alive?
Mbali, thank you for having us. Unati, thank you for having us on the show today. So as the Children's Fund, the two main things that we will be doing this Mandela Day, one is continuously keeping his legacy on the rights of children alive by talking on various platforms around the work that we do. And secondly is a call to action. So last year we conceptualized what we call the Mandela-thon, where we're saying to all of South Africa, you've given 67 minutes of time, but could we also have 67 Rand of a contribution towards the work that we do in financial terms? And we put it at 67 Rand because a lot of times people think you need lots of money to make a difference in the lives of somebody else. And 67 Rand is really foregoing a couple of coffees or a fast food or two for the day. And that enables us to do the important work that we do as the Children's Fund in alleviating the crisis that we face where children are concerned.
I mean, every year, you find that people want to give back. They look at the enormity of some of the problems, particularly those that are affecting children, just given the fact that Madiba loved children so much. How can individuals, and communities who want to support this day and who want to continue on Nelson Mandela's legacy contribute their little bit tomorrow?
So I think we need to get to a point, at least where children are concerned, where every hour has got to be a Mandela hour in the sense of making sure that the children within our sphere of influence are cared for. If we wait for one day in the year to do that, we will have done an injustice to his legacy. But in terms of the involvement that I talked about, where we're asking for a monetary contribution on our website and all our social media pages, we've got the details into which people can make a donation, and they can reference it Mandela-thon, which is what we call the fundraising that we run on the 18th of July. But more above the money is really making sure that each one of us does our part to look after the children around us and create that ripple effect where ultimately the children of South Africa are well taken care of.
We know, of course, when Mandela Day started many years ago in this country, it was well celebrated. I mean, schools across the country really galvanized support for various charities, etc., trying to live up to that standard. We're not seeing that happening so much now because we also know, of course, that we have our own challenges in this country, notwithstanding, of course, the cost of living, etc., that has affected so many people. And of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has obliterated many businesses. I mean, how do we continue on that thread, the thread that we started on, particularly this year?
I think it's talking to a position of saying, to what extent can I sacrifice? And, it's not about huge sums of money, like I said earlier. It's about the sacrificing of a couple of luxury items for most of us who are in a position to gain an income of sorts. But for those who are not, I think the service makes a difference. The service of making sure that when we talk about Ubuntu, we're extending it to children, because children are the most vulnerable, voiceless people in society. And if we can make sure that around us, as we move into the next 30 years of democracy, we change the picture, we change the narrative on the state of children in South Africa, we will have done justice to his legacy.
And I mean, just on a point that you raised earlier about how we can incorporate Ubuntu on a daily basis, let's talk and zone in on, the Nelson Mandela's Children's Hospital. I mean, how it continues to, embody Nelson Mandela's, personal philosophy and, of course, his values. How does that happen on a daily basis in terms of, integration and operations?
So at the hospital, 85% of the children who go to the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital, the specialist hospital, get treatment free of charge. And I think it talks to that whole ethos that Utata had of people being treated equally, of people being given opportunities. And I think that was his last gift to children was the Children's Hospital. What the thinking and the philosophy behind the hospital has always been that no child should lose their lives because they come from a family that cannot afford medical interventions. So the day-to-day life of the Children's Hospital in particular is about saving the lives of children who otherwise would have to pay astonishing amounts of monies that their families cannot afford, and so would actually die as a consequence of not getting the necessary medical interventions.
Ma'am, thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Of course, that was Dr. Linda Ncube-Nkomo, CEO of the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund.